So welcome back to the second part of animating virtual hand meshes using OpenXR hand tracking data in Unreal Engine tutorial. In the first part, we learn how to transition between motion controller and hand tracking, and also we learn how to debug virtual hands using gizmos. Continuing from there, in this tutorial, we are going to learn to actually how to animate virtual hand meshes, and also we are going to learn how to adjust our code for gesture detection from the previous tutorial. If you haven't already seen the previous tutorial, here you can find the first part of this tutorial, and also there was another tutorial which we are going to copy the gesture recognition code from, which was the introduction to the series, is this one. I highly recommend go watch those two tutorials if you haven't already, because we are not going to basically cover the fundamentals that we already covered. Anyways, back to our code where we left. We go back to VRPON, and as you can see, we already did some implementation for basically toggling between hand tracking and motion controller, and also drawing debug virtual hands. Now, basically, what I want to do is I want to do the actual animation. That's why I'm going to basically create a function called update XR hand. If you remember from the first tutorial, we had like 4 hand meshes. 2 of them were for the motion controller, which are attached to motion controllers, one for the left hand, one for the right hand. And we added 2 other mesh of type posable mesh components. And this update XR hand is going to basically work with these 2 and going to update the animation on the fly. So anyways, we are basically right now going to define a function. We named the function update XR hand, and in that function we are going to accept 2 parameters. One is going to be, of course, the hand, which I am going to name it hand, and of type controller, and if you remember from the first tutorial. And then we are going to accept a mesh, which we call mesh, and we are going to make it of type posable mesh component. Okay, then basically what we are gonna do, we go back to the event graph, because we want to just make sure it's getting called before we implement it. I'm going to press compile. Then I'm gonna add 2 more pins here, and I'm gonna draw one of these, basically draw a wire from one of those pins, and I'm gonna say update XR hand, or I can even drag it from here. But anyways, what I want to do is once all of the other sequences basically determine whether we are in hand tracking or we are using motion controller, we basically already determined the visibility of these 2 meshes. If these meshes are visible, that means we are using hand tracking. That's why I am going to call is valid, or is visible, sorry, is visible. If it is visible, then what am I gonna do? I'm gonna create a branch, and if that is visible, so I have to connect it to this, the execution flow should look like this basically. So anyways, what am I gonna do is, if it's visible, I'm gonna basically call the update XR hand and pass it the left hand and also the left hand mesh, which we are going to animate. Anyways, so let's drop a pin here also, just organize it maybe a bit better. Then I'm gonna press select everything and press C. I'm going to call it, put a comment on it, update the left hand animation. Then what am I gonna do? I'm gonna basically duplicate this code here, and oops, probably the wrong way to duplicate it. I have to press Ctrl C, then move the graph a bit, and okay, now everything is fine. So then I'm gonna connect this pin to this one. Also, I'm gonna update the comment. I'm gonna say update right hand animation. Then probably I have to remove this and this as well. And instead I will grab XR hand right. And I select both, press Q basically to align them. And then also another instance of XR hand right, and we are going to pass it to this function, which is called update XR hand. So and also make sure we pass it for the right hand. This one is for right hand, this one is for left hand. Okay, now we are done with this. Basically we don't, I believe we don't have to make any more changes to the main blueprints event graph, but I can maybe do this. Okay, it's basically comes down would you like to organize this, but for now I don't care. Okay, let's go and implement this function. Basically here, what we want to do, like the rest of the code that we wrote, first we are going to cache the values. So I'm gonna right click on this, promote to local variable, or you can drag a node here and promote to local variable, which we learned what is the difference between variables and local variables. Local variables are going to be used inside this function, but these variables are all accessible inside the whole blueprint actor VR pawn that we have. Anyways, I'm gonna name this one, let's name it, I could name it controller hand. Controller, why am I not typing? Controller hand. Then I'm going to name this one hand mesh, the second one. So basically what we do, we are going to cache these values, and I'm gonna comment these, call it cache the controller and the mesh. Okay, we cache those values. Then the second thing we are gonna do basically is going to get the hand tracking data and then verify the hand tracking data. So I'm not gonna write those. I can basically copy it from previous functions because it's redundant to basically write that code every time. So let's go back. We have something here. I don't want this one, but maybe I could go for the other one. But this one is also, yeah, let's copy this one. So anyway, I'm gonna basically copy this part, which is basically getting the hand tracking state. And once we get the hand tracking state, basically we do some verification on the data. So I'm gonna Control C. After selecting that, I'm gonna come back here. I'm gonna paste it, and okay. Maybe it's not well aligned. I'm gonna select these, and probably I have to Control Z undo, then I'm gonna paste it here. So it's better now. Okay, now I'm gonna connect the execution pin to this one, and let's select everything, just align it a bit. Okay, now we get the basically hand tracking data like the previous code that we described earlier for these functions and in the first part of the tutorial. And then here I'm gonna make some adjustments to this. Basically, I want to check if it's exactly equals 26 joints. And because I want to make sure I have the bones for basically the data for 26 joints or bones. So, and then I'm gonna put an and boolean here. So I'm gonna connect that to this one as well. And we should be good to go now, I believe. So, okay, now that we have the basically hand tracking data, I can also remove these for now. So what am I gonna do basically like before, because if you remember when we were basically drawing the debug virtual hand, once we validated the data, we are going to do a for each loop. Basically, we could have also copied these over, but we didn't anyway. So basically, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna copy this for each loop and iterate over the joints location because we have 26 of those and joint rotations, and I'm gonna pass it to a function or do some animation or whatever. Anyways, let's go back inside this function. What am I gonna do? I am going to add a for each loop here. And then what I need is maybe I'm going to iterate over the hand location, which we already discussed. It has like 26 joints. Anyways, let's do it in a way that is more clear what we are going to do. So also for the, okay, then I'm gonna get a reference. We did describe in the previous tutorial what is the difference between a get and a get ref and a get copy. So we are not going to explain that, but a get ref should work for us in this case. Anyway, I'm gonna give it the array index. That means every time I iterate over it, first time I get the first element, second time second element, and so on and so forth. So here also I'm gonna get a ref of the rotation. So we have the rotation as well. We are gonna organize this a bit. So we have this as well. Press Q. Okay, now what should I be doing basically from this point on is I want to animate the basically the bones for the mesh. And if I compile, there are some compilation errors. Why is that? It says cross XR system query returns critical information. Hand pin is invalid. Ah, okay, yeah, of course. Of course, hand is invalid because we have to basically the hand that we did already cached, we have to provide it to this one, whether we are going, this was, if you remember, this was the hand that was passed to the function. So now this works. But anyway, let's go back to what we are doing here. Basically, once we iterate over the loop, we have to modify every bone in the hand mesh, okay? If we go to characters, mannequin XR, if we go to meshes, Here we have the skeleton, which we can double click to open. And here, as you can see, for every hand, because this skeleton is basically shared between two skeletal meshes, that's why you see, like for example, hand L, hand R, which is for the rest of the hand. If let's decrease the camera speed a bit. Okay, if you see, basically hand R is the wrist, then for example, the palm, which is here, or for example, pinky, for example, this one is distal joint, or like the metacarpal is this one, for example. Anyway, any joint that has a name, but there's also some of these for the other hand which are inactive. But if you open the mesh, which is linked to this one, for example, if I want to delete this, it says it is referenced by these assets, which also the basically all the other meshes for the hand left or hand right, for queen or Mani, which are two sets of hands here. Both of them are referencing this. But anyway, if we open the mesh as well, you can see it's on the hand left. Basically, these are active, but on hand right, the other ones are active. But anyways, there should be a way for us to basically animate these joints. So we go back inside VRPON here. There's a function called set bone transform, as you can see here. And also what I can do, I can get a reference of my hand mesh, which we did accept as the function parameter here. I'm gonna grab this, get hand mesh, and then I can drag a node from this. I could say set bone transform. There's one which is going to reset it, but we want the set bone transform. And if we take this one, as you can see, it just accepts the transform, which I can basically break it by right clicking on it and split a struct, and then I can give it the location and also the rotation, which is going to be converted from a quaternion to a Euler angle, as you can see here automatically. We don't care about the translation, but there's one more parameter that we have to basically specify, and that one is bone name. So what should I be basically providing? The bone name is I have to basically, once I iterate over the element, I have like 26 of these locations and rotations. Oops, there is a bug here. I didn't notice it. You have to also specify the array index to this one as well. We forgot it to do it, because then it's going to only always returns the rotation for the first joint, and the locations of course are correct, but yeah, because it was indexing the only element 0. But we have to be careful here because it was an unintentional basically thing, which is going to cause a bug in our code if we are reckless. But anyway, so I have to somehow retrieve the bone names, because I don't want to basically duplicate this like for 52 times for both of those hands. And then I want to find a way that programmatically I extract the names and then do the set bone transform from the OpenXR locations and rotations that we have. So what can I do? What can I do is basically I can go back inside this event graph, or just inside this variable from my blueprint panel. I can define a variable name, for example, left hand mesh bone names. I'm gonna make this of type name, which is also, this one is of type name, as you can see, bone name. And then I'm gonna make it an array. of course, I can create a map. Maybe that's easier for some people, but I prefer arrays. I will just explain it in a bit. What's the difference? But anyway, I'm gonna define an array. Then what am I gonna do inside this array? Basically, I will create 26 joints like this. For example, I go back inside the skeleton here. I'm gonna right click on this. I say copy bone name, and then this is the first bone name, but of course this is for the right hand. I have to do it for the left hand, which is this one. Copy bone names. I'm gonna copy it here. Then the next bone name, for example, this one, copy bone names, and I'm gonna do the rest of this. But I don't want to do that because it's a tedious task, but I'm lazy, of course, and laziness is the basically reason for to get creative and find another way to basically populate the data here. But anyway, the idea is I want to have an array containing the name, then I will find it based on the index inside the array. But because here I have an index. There is another way. You can basically, for example, create left hand mesh bone names map. You can make it a map here. What is a map? What is the difference? The difference is map has a key and a value. For example, here I could specify hand key point, which are the joint names. And I can specify name here. And if I recompile, as you can see here, once I add the element, for example, I say for palm, this is the name, palm underline L. For example, wrist, it's hand L, whatever. And as you can see, I can basically name them using the struct. Then what I can do in order to access it, once I have this, basically I can say get, what was the, basically how do we get the element from a map? I don't remember exactly. There should be a function get, or I don't remember how to do it in Blueprint, but probably using find maybe, or keys or values. You could get the key and value, but of course we are gonna do the find. Yeah, you could use the find basically command, and then here specify, for example, the index. It's going to, or you can cast it. There was a way to cast this, I believe. Cast E, maybe we remove this, E controller hand. There should be a way, I believe, to cast this, but I don't remember. But there is a way to cast this to E controller hand. Basically, you can do E controller. Yeah. Okay, this is it. It's not cast, it's by to enum E controller hand. And then you can specify this as this one. Maybe this, yeah, that one. And then, yeah, it's going to find the element and give you the name. But that's not the way I prefer to do it. It might seem easier, but I believe the other approach using arrays are much, much easier. So I'm gonna let go of this. I only care about the arrays. Okay, how can we basically have the names populated here and also in the correct order, because the order matter here. Basically, we have to translate somehow the index to the correct name. So I'm gonna delete all these. Let's go to take a look at the Unreal Engine source code here. If we go to github.com/epic games I believe I have to use my other browser because I don't have my password. So let me bring this other browser here, github.com/epicgames/Unreal Engine. Okay, if you come here, basically for the latest source code, you go to engine, go to source, go to runtime, and then here I believe there should be a head-mounted display. And if you go inside basically this public folder here, there should be a head-mounted display types. And I have to open a notepad because yeah, I've got my notepad here. So, and if you type Control F and then look for hand key point, yeah, the type that we just defined. Let me zoom in a bit. Well, here, as you can see, Unreal Engine defines this enum as type int8, which is of type integer. Basically here, there's an order to this, and if I copy all these, let's copy them, and copy, and we go to Notepad here, or Notepad++, you see there are like 26 joints. And I believe there was a way to create a new tab or something, move to other view. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's okay. We could do it like this. Okay, now I have my 26 joints. Basically what I can do is I could go to Unreal Engine inside my mesh and then or in the skeleton, and I'm going to select all these joints from hand L to all the way to thumb, and I'm gonna copy bone names, all of them together. Then I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna paste it, and there's a shortage. Why? Because there are 5 joints which don't exist inside basically this one. And those are the tips of the hand, which they don't exist. For example, you see the thumb metacarpal is named thumb underline basically 01 underline L, then the next one and the next one, but there is no basically tip. Maybe we see it with this one because this is a right hand. And as you can see here, yeah, it's metacarpal, but for the other ones it is called metacarpal, and then basically there's an order to it. So you come forward, it will then from the metacarpal it's become proximal, and then distal, and then I guess this one is distal. Anyway, you can always look this up, type OpenXR hand joint names. And if you go to images, you always open image in new tab. You can always basically see the joints name and basically map them inside Unreal Engine. For example, these are proximal, then there are intermediate, then distal, and then there is tip. Anyways, what I do is I'm going to do it for hand left. I'm going to copy bone names. I'm gonna come here and then paste them. So we have to reorder things a bit. Let's do it right now. The first one is hand L. This is going to basically be palm. I'm gonna bring up palm. Then this one is wrist, hand L. Then we have the thumbs. I'm gonna basically have the thumbs, which means thumb metacarpal, thumb proximal, thumb distal. Then the thumb tip, we don't have anything, we leave it empty. Then index metacarpal, index 1, 2, 3, and then again index tip, we don't have it. Then there is basically middle metacarpal, middle proximal, intermediate, whatever. We don't have the tip. Then there is the ring. And so basically I'm gonna come here, ring metacarpal, ring, so on and so forth, to ring tip. And then there's pinky, and we don't have the pinky tip. Now, we have our 26 joints. Some of them, because they don't exist on the mesh, they don't have a name, so we leave them empty. But anyway, if I simply copy these and try to basically paste them here inside VRPON, and if I try to paste them, it's not gonna work, as you can see. So there is a format, we can figure it out. For example, let's say I'm gonna say palm, I'm gonna say wrist, whatever, and then maybe add one, just A, who cares. We are going to copy these, and we go back to Notepad++. Let's create a new one. As you can see, there is a format here, which means basically inside the parentheses, they are quoted, and then they are separated by a comma. So what am I gonna do here? I'm gonna press Control H, which brings up this find and replace inside Notepad++. It says find what? Make sure these extended option search mode is enabled. On Windows, when we press basically type /R/N, this is the line separator. If you are on Linux or on basically Mac, you are going to use /N. That is enough. But here, because I'm on Windows by default, most editors they use /R/N for carriage return, which means enter. And if I press find, as you can see, it's able to find the line endings. Okay, I'm going to replace the line endings with what? With basically this part, which is going to be the closing quote and a comma, and then the opening one. So if I press replace all, it's going to get this right. And then for the last element, which is empty, I'm going to close the quote, and then this is basically pinky tip or ladle tip. Then I'm gonna also open the parentheses and also quote it. So if I copy these, and go back inside Unreal, basically I'm gonna delete these and then press paste. Nice. You see, I was lazy. I resolved it instead of basically copy these one by one. And these are for hand left. For hand right, we only changed the ending. If you remember here, there was underline L. For hand right, it was underline R. So I'm going to come back here, Control H. I say any underline L, replace it with underline R. So that's it. This is going to be copied. Then I'm gonna go back to Unreal, and inside VRPON, I'm gonna define another variable. I'm gonna say right hand mesh bone names. So here I also make this of type, it should not be a map, it should be array and of type name. So compile, and we are going to paste it here. Nice, we have all joints in the correct order, and as you can see, the tips of the finger are automatically set to none. You should not basically put a string here, none, because they are going to be copied as a string, but these are special values in Unreal Engine, these nones, so that's why we kept it empty, and Unreal was able to figure it out. Anyways, we are going to save this. Now, I have to basically define another function. I want to call it get hand mesh bone name. Basically what I want to do is pass the index to it. And then once I pass the index to that one, I'm gonna basically get the hand mesh bone name. So in order to do that, basically I'm going to define a function, new function, let's say get hand mesh bone names, and I'm gonna add an input to it. I'm gonna name it two inputs actually. One is of course hand, which means I'm gonna get hand e controller hand, and the second one is I'm going to call it joint index of type integer. So that's it. We basically have the joint index and have the basically hand. Also, we are going to return a bone name. We call it bone name. Basically, this is going to extract the bone name for that index from the array. But anyways, for the implementation, what we do here is basically we are going to cache the bone index first, and then basically do a check which hand we are using. So I'm gonna promote this to a local variable. I'm gonna call it bone index because we have one called joint index. Then I'm gonna call this bone index. So once let's forget about this. Okay, once we did that, then what am I gonna do? I'm gonna put a switch. I have to make this context sensitive. It would be easier then. So basically, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna check the hand. Let's make this a bit neat. Okay. So once I come inside the function, I'm gonna cache the bone index, and then here, if basically if it's not left or right hand, I'm gonna return basically none. There is no what do you call it, bone by that name exists. But if it's, for example, hand left, what am I gonna do is basically the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add a branch. This is important. If we don't want to crash the game inside the editor, of course, it's not gonna crash, but inside the game, once you package your game, it's going to crash because the editor is able to catch these kind of errors. What kind of errors? Basically, we want to check the boundaries of the array. If the index, we know, for example, the index should be from 0 to 25 because we have 25. But the user, because the input is of type here, the joint index of type integer, for example, they could enter 500, 1000, whatever, which do not exist. We go out of the bound of the array, then we are going to crash because it's illegal memory access. So the thing is, I have to first check the length against the bone index and check if the bone index is basically smaller than the length. If we have like 26 joints like this from 0 to 25, bone index could be 0 to 25, but the length could be 26 because the index is from 0, but the length is of course counted from 1. Then I'm gonna say basically if this was smaller than the length, get the length. If it was smaller than the length, then do something. Okay, what are we gonna do is basically of course if it's not, we are going to, if the length is not within the bound, we are going to return again none. But if it's within the bound, then I'm gonna get left hand mesh bone names array, and I'm gonna get a ref, and then I'm gonna get bone index, and once this is done, I'm gonna basically add another return node, which is going to return this thing. So let's connect this to return node, and then yeah, I think this should be good. Basically, what am I gonna do here? I'm gonna get the here, as I said, if it was the hand left, I'm gonna get the left hand mesh bone names, check the length. Once I check the length and basically bone index was within the range, if it was not, I'm gonna return none. If it was, then I'm gonna get the bone name. So let's comment this and add C. We're going to say get left and bone names, whatever. Then I'm gonna duplicate this, Control B. Let's move this a bit. Okay, then we are going to connect this. And for the hand right, probably I have to replace this with the array from hand right. And then here also. And it should be good to go almost. We have to fix the comment as well. So that's it. This is the implementation for this function. It's going to return us the correct bone name, and we are going to pass it by index. So let's go back inside the get update XR hand here. I'm gonna call that function, what was it? The get hand mesh bone name. And then I'm gonna pass in the index, and also I need to know the hand. So we already cached the controller hand. That's why I'm gonna put here this one. Let's move this a bit. Move this a bit as well. So now I believe it should be really neat. So then I'm gonna, after I got the hand mesh bone name, I'm gonna pass it to this one here. Double click and clean it up a bit. Okay, I think it's good enough. So here, what I do basically, once I extracted that inside the for each loop, we are going to set the bone transform by name, which we already extracted the name, and it's going to do that. If everything is good, it's going to compile. We are going to save it. Then let's test it. I'm gonna run my Oculus Quest link. Then I'm gonna do VR preview. Well, you see hands, but well, these are distorted hands. And also, just one more thing, if I basically raise my head, you see what happens? When I raise my head, the thing that happens, I don't know if it's visible inside that. Maybe what I can do is make this full screen for you to see. I guess I have to rerun this. Yeah, now it should be visible. As you can see, when I raise my head, the mesh disappears. That's something weird, because when we do with the controllers, as you can see here, I've switched to the controller hand. What happens here is basically they don't disappear. Wherever I look, they don't disappear at all. But with this posable mesh hand components, when I raise my hand, it just disappears. Why? There is a reason for it. But before that, let's press D to see the gizmos for you to see it. You see the gizmos are there, but the hand disappears. So it's not a visibility bug. That's the thing I can confirm, because we were only going to draw these gizmos when the hands were visible. If you remember, basically, if you go inside VRPON, if you go inside the event graph, we were only going to draw the debug virtual hand when the hand was visible. basically. So what's the problem? The problem is if you go to XR hand left and right, there's something called bound scale. And this is something, if you target, basically keep your mouse on it, it's going to show a tooltip with some basically explanation. Uh, because these basically posable mesh components, from what I know, is a bit different the way Unreal Engine handles them than the mesh components. That's why you have to increase the bound scale. Otherwise, they are going to disappear for rendering, for performance purposes, basically, when they are out of that bound. So I'm going to increase this to 100 for the left hand and right hand. And then basically you can read the description here. It says it also hits the performance. So if you increase it, and also the shadow quality that's the thing about it. Anyway, I'm gonna put 100 here, then I'm gonna save. Let's see if we address that issue. Yeah, I can now see my hands anywhere I want, and I basically don't care which direction I'm looking. That's the first problem that we saw. But here I see a problem. The problem is basically the rotation of the joints. Basically, they are somehow off. Okay, what's the reason? If we go back inside the content browser, characters, mannequin, and meshes, and if you open any of these meshes, either left or right, and if you take a look at here at the gizmos and the direction, let's decrease the camera speed. Okay, so here, as you can see, the direction is a bit off because the hand should be basically facing the X direction. Basically, it should be its forward, but here it's not. That's the way Unreal Engine usually, even their mannequin is like 90 degrees off. And yeah, you have to always consider that when you go this low level about like animating things with code. So the thing is here, like as you can see, Z is up. Now Y is like the direction, which is of course Y is going to be the right vector here. But now it's basically pointing toward us, the Y direction, Y axis, and X is now pointing in that direction. So even for the other hand, you can check that. But so what we should do, basically we should transform the bones. That's why we have to calculate an offset also once we here, if we go inside the update XR hand here, once we give it the transform, we can define another function which is going to correct the what do you call it, the rotation for us, and the location, of course. It's going to be passed to the function we needed in order to calculate a new transform. So that's why I'm going to add another function, and I'm going to call it get, let's say get hand mesh bone location and rotation. Of course, I could basically, if I go back here, I could get a transform and return, or get the location and rotation and return a transform to be passed, but I honestly don't care about the scale here. So I only care about these two. That's why I named that function get hand mesh bone location and rotation. So what we are going to do is basically inside that function, we are going to accept a hand key location and hand key rotation. So I'm going to remove this from here. Then I go to input and output. I'm gonna call this hand key location of type vector. and I'm gonna add and key rotation. Then basically what am I gonna do is I'm going to return a bone location and a bone rotation. So it should be bone location and a bone rotation. Of course, this should be of type rotator. This should be of type rotator. Or we could even accept a quad, for example. But yeah, if we want to, we can directly accept a quad, but return a rotator. So anyways, once we do that, basically we should, from here, we should call make transform, and we are going to pass in the location, pass in the rotation. Okay, my Unreal Engine froze for a bit. I don't know why, but okay, we are going to get a rotation here. Anyways, so we make a transform, and then basically I have to introduce a variable. I'm gonna call it animation bone. Let's say animation bone correction of bone correction rotation offset. What a hilarious name. And I'm gonna make it of type single and make it a rotator. And I'm gonna compile. For now it's 0, 0, 0, but we're gonna experiment with it to see which is going to be the correct direction. But anyway, so anyways, let's add this and also make another transform from this. Make transform. So I'm gonna convert this to a transform. Let's get these out of the way. Also select this. Maybe okay. Now once we have our transforms, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna compose transforms. Maybe you didn't. Oh god. Compose, like my Unreal Engine suddenly super slow. I don't know why. But anyway, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna use compose transform, but if you basically hold your cursor over it, it says it's going to compose to transform in order A multiplied by B. But that multiplication, it does not meet multiplication here probably. But anyway, it says compose transform, but there is a difference. Basically, the way you pass the input, it makes a difference. If you, for example, here, as you can see, it says delta rotation will change the first one, example local to word. It says we'll change the rotation in local space by delta rotation. But if you go for the second one, basically pass delta rotation as the second parameter and local to word, will change rotation in world space by delta rotation. So that's why I go for the basically first one, because my delta rotation, which is the offset, I want to change the rotation in local space by the rotation, not in world space. So 90 degrees in one direction, I want to do it in the local space. That's why I'm gonna pass it as the first parameter, then basically the other transform, which is in world rotation, I'm going to pass it as the second parameter. And once I have that, I'm gonna split the struct, and that's it. That's all we need. Of course, we have to calculate, we have to know the offset as well. But anyway, that's it for this function. Basically, it's going to calculate the transform. Then if I go inside my update XR hand function here, and basically I move this a bit, I'm gonna drag one of these, get left hand mesh bone location and rotation. Then I'm gonna move this one here, and also I'm gonna move this one here. So, and then what am I gonna do is basically what I want to do. I can take this. Probably it's much cleaner now. Also, these could. Oh God, my Unreal is frozen. So I'm gonna drag this into this one, but of course I can delete these and directly because it's a quad now. And then here I'm gonna pass in the rotation for this one. And then we get, once we have the location, the corrected location and the corrected rotation, we are going to pass it to the basically set bone transform name. Apologies for the interruption. My system just froze with a blue screen of this, so I had to reboot my system. But let's continue from where we left off. Basically what we did, we had a get hand mesh bone location and rotation. We were passing the retrieve the location and rotation from OpenXR to this function, and inside this function we introduced animation bone correction rotation offset variable to basically correct the transform using the compose transform, and locally we apply an offset to it, and we are going to return it, and then we are going to pass that to set bone transform by name. But for now, the value of animation bone correction rotation offset is all 0, 0, 0. Let's see how the game looks like once we run the simulation. And as you can see, still these joints are basically in the wrong direction. But we can also, of course, now experiment. Let's say we don't even know the math, how to do it. What you can do, basically, there are a few cases. It could, either of these could be like, for example, 90 or minus 90. So probably it creates around, I don't know how many, because I don't basically my statistics were not really good at high school, so I don't know, maybe 27 cases, I believe. But probably we have to test them all, but you don't have to. Let's just, because I know it, let's just experiment and see. As you can see, now the hand is distorted in another way because we rotated it by 90 degrees. But of course, you could go, for example, minus 90 maybe. You see what happens in the extraction? You see it's again distorted in another way. So it's going to basically work if we have the correct value. But here I'm gonna say 90. Again, I'm gonna play. Okay, as you can see, it looks a bit better, but not exactly. You see the twist here? And if I press D and show the bones, you see they are not at the correct location and rotation now. But anyway, so what is the correct one is for the first one, 90, 0, 90. This is basically the correct rotation and location. I can copy it for you to see and paste it inside Notepad++. You see, with the pitch 0, yaw 90, and roll 90, it's going to work. Let's see. But anyway, compile, save, and VR preview. Well, congratulations, it works. Now we have a set of correctly animated hands, and it's working based on the OpenXR data. I can press D on my keyboard to show the gizmos, and as you can see, everything is working as expected. So this is it. This is basically how we animate virtual hand meshes in real time using the hand tracking data. But now I want to add the gesture detection. That's the last part of this tutorial, which is not very difficult because in the initial tutorial to the series, we already did it. As I've mentioned, it's here in this tutorial. But anyway, let's open the project, which is this one, XR Hands. If you go to that video in the description, the source code for that project is there. But also I'm going to upload the source code for the current project as well and put the link in the description. So let's see, it's here. Inside that project, we had a blueprint here inside this folder, Mamadou XR, BPXR hands, and there we had like a check gesture function, which was going to basically get the joint transforms and do something here anyway to do the gesture detection. We are not going to go through that. I'm just going to copy this function, and then I'm going to be here, and then let's just paste it here, paste function. Okay, we have it, and then here I have to make some modification basically in order for this to work, because it expects us to enter the joint transforms, which I don't have. So that's why basically I'm gonna delete this part of the code. Let's delete this. I'm gonna delete this parameter as well. I'm gonna add a parameter. I'm gonna call it hand, and then make it of type eController hand. So basically now I have this eController hand, and then I need to retrieve the hand tracking state and the data from it. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna go to update XR hand quickly, and here I'm gonna copy this part, get hand tracking state, and where we do the validation on the data. So I'm gonna copy these two parts, Control C. I'm gonna go to check gesture. Let's go back, Control V. I hated how Unreal pastes things into each other, but anyway, it should be working. Let's connect this to that one. And we don't need the controller hand from this one, but we have the hand from that, the function input. So basically that's it. And then, yeah, we have the hand tracking state, then we are iterating over it. Then once that is true, we have to connect this to this branch here, which calculates the pinch threshold and detect a pinch. But also, here. What we need here is basically we have to get the rotation and locations for the hand key location and rotation instead of the old transform that we deleted from this old function. We have to pass it to this one. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna drag a node here. I'm gonna say get ref, and also one for rotation. Let's say get ref. So we need this, we need this. And I'm gonna delete this. And yeah, so I can select both of these, press Q, then on this one as well. I'm gonna do that. So we have these. Let's extend these a bit, maybe move these all the way to the left. So here, once we have this thing, I'm gonna press Ctrl Z. But anyway, we pass basically the index for this one. This is going to also go to this one. Maybe I reorganize this a bit like this because it's already too much cluttered. So yeah, this should be better. Okay, now what I should do is move these a bit to the right. Okay, this should look a bit better. But anyway, because we are going to open up a bit of a space by deleting this one, I'm gonna grab this using basically I'm holding Control key on my keyboard, so I can drag this to this without breaking anything. Also Control, drag this to this, and from here only a scale is remaining. So I'm gonna delete this, but if you remember, this was for our particle. Also the particle is because we copied the code, Unreal cannot assign it. So it was this particle expression. If you don't see it, the reason is when once you copy the code, you don't see the explosion here. So you have to select it. I'm gonna delete the scale. It's 1 meter, which is too much. I'm gonna make it 1 centimeter by doing 0.01. So, okay, that's that. And then I believe everything is good for the first one. For the second one, I'm gonna do the same thing. Let's get a ref. And let's get a ref for this one. Get a ref. Basically, these are when once we do the pinch detection using thumb and index, we want to get their transform and their basically their location and rotation. And that's why we were doing these. But anyway, I'm gonna hold Control, connect this, hold Control, connect this. And we don't need the scale. So I'm gonna delete that. And I believe we should be good to go. So if I compile and save, I guess we have a check gesture function as well now. And it should be functional if we are doing everything correctly. Let's see. So, something is not working. Let's see. Let's see. Well, I know what is not working because as always, I forget it. Yeah, we have implemented the check gesture function. We fixed the implementation. But if we go back inside the event graph, nowhere we are calling this function. So I'm gonna add another pin here, basically inside the event graph. And once I'm there, I'm gonna basically call the function twice, once for the left hand and once for the right hand. So let's come here, say check gesture. Also, we can drag it from here as well. Once for the left hand, once for the right hand. I'm gonna connect this and we can move this a bit also. So it's going to be the last sequence that is going to run. I'm gonna comment it and say check gestures for both hands. Compile the code, save, let's see. So it's working, you see? We have the gesture detection as well, and everything is working as expected. So I hope you have enjoyed the tutorial. this was it for this tutorial. And basically, if you would like to follow my tutorials, I'm going to release more tutorials, both for VR and Unreal Engine. And if you would like to get notified, please subscribe to my channel. And also, I'm gonna put the link to the project source files in the description so you can find the project source files. I hope you have enjoyed it, and see you next time.